Roman Reigns confronts Seth Rollins backstage at SummerSlam after stealing CM Punk's title. Tensions explode backstage at WWE SummerSlam 2025 as Roman Reigns storms into Seth Rollins' locker room. And it's all about CM Punk's stolen title. This unscripted, intense confrontation has fans buzzing. Did Seth really steal CM Punk's legacy? And what does Roman have to say about it? The lights had dimmed on the roaring stadium of WWE SummerSlam 2025, but backstage, something even more electric was unfolding. Cameras weren't supposed to be rolling. Security guards had been warned to stay clear. And yet, tension filled the air like smoke in a burning room. This wasn't just another confrontation. This wasn't a scripted run-in. This was real. Roman Reigns had arrived at the venue not to perform, but to confront. And the target of his rage? None other than the reigning WWE World Heavyweight Champion, Seth freakin' Rollins. Only hours earlier, Seth Rollins had walked out of his match triumphantly, the gold glinting in the lights, CM Punk's title, the one he never lost in the ring. A belt that had been vacated after Punk's injury, stripped from him during a heated political fallout with management, and placed into a tournament Rollins eventually won. But to Punk's supporters, and there were many, that title was never Seth's to begin with. It was theft dressed in championship glory. And for Roman Reigns, that theft struck a nerve deeper than anyone knew. Backstage, the atmosphere was razor-sharp. Crew members whispered, eyes wide, glancing toward the private locker room door of Seth Rollins. Roman Reigns hadn't been booked for a match. He hadn't been advertised. He hadn't even shown his face during the pay-per-view broadcast. But now he was here, hoodie pulled low, eyes ice cold, with a silent purpose that no one dared question. He walked past staff like a ghost, undisturbed and unchallenged. No security tried to stop him. No producer asked him to wait. It was as if everyone, even the walls themselves, knew something seismic was about to unfold. And then it happened. A single hand slammed the locker room door open with brutal force. The sound of it cracked like thunder through the hallway. Seth, who had just finished unlacing his boots and was still catching his breath after a grueling match, stood up slowly, his body tensing immediately. Roman didn't say a word at first. He just stared. That tribal chief aura, the weight of silence, bore down on the room like a mountain. Seth stared back, defiant as ever, but beneath that cocky smirk was a flicker of uncertainty. He knew this wasn't a friendly visit. You proud of yourself? Roman finally spoke, voice low but lethal. That title, that ain't yours. Seth chuckled, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, trying to play it cool. Funny. I don't see Punk's name on it. But I do see mine. Roman didn't move. His body was stiff, every muscle tense like a coiled spring. You know damn well what I'm talking about. Seth stepped forward now, no longer hiding behind sarcasm. I earned this. I bled for this. Punk walked out. I stayed. That makes me the champion. Roman's jaw clenched. You didn't win it from him. Because he couldn't make it to the ring. Seth fired back, voice rising. You think I asked for him to fall apart again? He had his shot, and he blew it. Just like always. That was the wrong thing to say. Roman's fist slammed into the locker door behind Seth with a deafening thud, inches from his face. You don't get to talk about him like that, Roman hissed. You're not half the man he is, and you sure as hell ain't the champion he was. Seth didn't flinch, but the smirk had vanished. So what, Roman? You here to defend Punk now? I thought you hated him. Roman stepped back, his eyes narrowing. I don't like him. But I respect him. And there's a difference. One you'll never understand. For a brief second, the room froze. Two titans of WWE, standing nose to nose, not over a match, not over gold, but over something deeper: legacy. Loyalty. Respect. The kind of invisible crown that only a few ever wore. Where was that respect, Seth said slowly, when you sat at the head of the table and buried every name who stood in your way? Where was it when you crushed Jay? When you humiliated Jimmy? You don't get to lecture me about respect, Roman. Not anymore. Roman's voice dropped to a whisper, each word slicing through the tension like a knife. I never pretended to be something I wasn't. You're hiding behind that title. You know it's not yours. You're walking around backstage like a king, but you're nothing without Paul Heyman propping you up. Seth's eyes flickered. The mention of Paul hit a nerve. I don't need Heyman, Seth growled. And I damn sure don't need your approval. Roman laughed. But it wasn't amusement. It was disbelief. It was disappointment. You think this business is just about wins and belts? You think carrying Punk's ghost around makes you a legend? Let me tell you something, Seth. You can wear that title all you want, but deep down, you'll always know the truth. You didn't beat the best. You inherited the mess. The silence that followed was unbearable, and then Seth spoke, not as a showman, not as a visionary, but as a man who had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Maybe I did, he admitted, but someone had to. Roman shook his head. No, you didn't carry it. You stole it. And just like that, Roman turned to leave. But before he stepped through the door, he looked back one last time. You better hope Punk never walks back through those doors, he said coldly, because if he does, this whole charade of yours crumbles. He was gone before Seth could respond. The door creaked shut behind him, and all that remained in the room was the echo of a confrontation that shook the very pillars of WWE's foundation. Word spread like wildfire. Crew members who overheard bits and pieces whispered to one another, texts flew from phones, tweets ignited timelines. Everyone in the arena, even those still glued to the monitors watching the post-match recaps, knew something bigger than a match had just taken place. This wasn't just a locker room argument. This was war. Back in the production truck, a young assistant producer turned to the lead director and said, "Should we roll the footage?" The director paused for a moment, calculating the implications, then shook his head. Not yet. Let it simmer. Because that's what WWE understood better than anyone. Real moments weren't just content. They were power. And when two of the biggest stars in the business went to war backstage, it didn't need a spotlight. The darkness said enough. Meanwhile, Roman Reigns was already gone. No trace left behind. No statement to the press. No words to the fans. But his message had been delivered loud and clear. Seth Rollins was holding a title that didn't belong to him. And the man who once dominated WWE for over 1,200 days had returned, not for glory, but for reckoning. Back in his locker room, Seth stared at the title for a long, quiet moment. His fingers traced the edge of the belt, eyes heavy with something between pride and guilt. He had fought for this. He had risked everything for this. But in Roman's words, and in the shadow of CM Punk, there was a weight he couldn't shake. The question now wasn't whether Seth Rollins could defend the title. It was whether he could keep it. Before the ghosts of champions passed and the fury of legends present came crashing down, and the scariest part, he wasn't sure. Hours passed, but the storm Roman Reigns had unleashed backstage at SummerSlam 2025 refused to settle. It wasn't just about what was said, it was about what wasn't. The silence Roman left behind in that locker room spoke louder than the shouting ever could. And now, the entire WWE universe was echoing with questions no one had the courage to answer. What did Roman Reigns really mean? Was he defending CM Punk, or issuing a warning to Seth Rollins? Was this about honor, or something darker? Backstage, officials scrambled to control the fallout. Reports began to leak quietly, and then all at once. Some claimed Roman had demanded to speak to Triple H the moment he arrived. Others said Roman had refused to sign any paperwork, refused to acknowledge the cameras, refused even to be mic'd. He didn't come as a performer. He came as a man on a mission, and perhaps most alarmingly, there were rumors that Roman wasn't acting alone. Whispers began circulating about a small group of men in street clothes, not superstars, not staff. Seen following Roman through the underground parking structure before the confrontation. No one recognized them. But someone later swore they saw Jacob Fatu, dressed in black, staying close to the shadows. Another claimed they caught a glimpse of Zilla Fatu in a tinted SUV that left immediately after Roman's own black Escalade exited the building. It was subtle. Too subtle to be a coincidence. In the days that followed, the footage leaked. Not from WWE. Not from the official production team. But a security cam, grainy, dark, and unfiltered, showed the confrontation in part. The door slamming open. Roman stepping in. Seth standing. Their faces nose to nose. No audio. Just body language. Raw, unedited tension. The clip went viral in minutes. Fans were stunned. Some were outraged. Others were exhilarated. But no one could deny it. This was the realest moment they'd seen in years. Podcasts lit up overnight. Did Roman just declare war on Seth? Is this Roman's way of siding with Punk? Is a new faction forming behind the scenes? By the end of the week, one thing became clear. SummerSlam 2025 wasn't remembered for the matches. It was remembered for what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Meanwhile, CM Punk was silent. Not a single tweet, not a podcast rant, not a public appearance, and that silence only made things worse. The absence of his voice became the loudest headline in the room. Some speculated that Punk had spoken to Roman before the event. Others believed Roman was acting on his own, attempting to cleanse the WWE of what he saw as injustice, using Punk's name not to align with him, but to expose the truth. Backstage politics reached a fever pitch. Triple H was livid. Reports from insiders claimed he had confronted Roman the next morning at WWE headquarters. The exact words weren't known, but one producer quoted Triple H as saying, "You just set off a fire I can't put out." And Roman, he didn't apologize. He simply said, "Maybe it needs to burn." That statement alone sent shockwaves across the locker room. Seth Rollins didn't take long to respond, though his response came not in a press conference or a tweet, but in the opening segment of Monday Night Raw. He walked out to the ring, title in hand, with a fire in his eyes that hadn't been seen in months. Gone was the visionary. Gone was the suit and swagger. What stood in the ring was a man pushed into a corner. "You want to talk about respect?" Seth said into the mic, staring straight into the hard cam. "Let's talk about what it takes to show up. Let's talk about what it takes to stay." CM Punk didn't stay. Roman Reigns didn't stay. But I did. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Others booed. But all listened. I carried this company while Roman sat at home and CM Punk sat in rehab, Seth shouted, his voice raw. "I didn't steal this title. I saved it." Then, as if daring the ghosts he referenced, he lifted the belt high into the air. "If either one of you has a problem with that," he continued, "you know where to find me." That night, Seth Rollins made one thing clear. He wasn't backing down. Not from Roman. Not from Punk. Not from anyone. But what he didn't realize was that the storm had only just begun, because backstage, in a quiet dressing room, Paul Heyman was watching. Alone. He didn't speak. He didn't move. But those who passed by the door said the expression on his face was unlike anything they had seen before. Not rage. Not fear. Disappointment. And in Paul Heyman's world, that was far worse. Later that week, Heyman would appear on SmackDown, not with Roman Reigns, not with Solo Sikoa, but by himself, microphone in hand. Tie loosened. Face grave. He stared into the camera and said the words that changed the game. CM Punk may have lost the title, but Seth Rollins lost something far more dangerous, Roman Reigns' respect. And when a man like Roman feels disrespected, he doesn't go to war. He ends it. The arena fell into dead silence. This wasn't a promo. This was a warning. Suddenly, everything shifted. Punk wasn't just an absence anymore. He was a ticking time bomb. Roman wasn't just returning. He was reshaping the battlefield. And Seth Rollins? He was caught between two legends, both of whom had the power to bury him. Fans started speculating that Roman might be rebuilding something, not the bloodline, but a new faction. A new alliance. One based not on family, but on purpose. The New Empire, some fans called it. Others had more cryptic names. The Return, The Reckoning. The full point: one thing was certain, SummerSlam had ignited something WWE hadn't seen in years. Real fear. Meanwhile, CM Punk was spotted not backstage at a WWE event, but in Chicago, in the basement gym where he trained for his UFC fights years ago. Someone snapped a photo. Punk in sweats, eyes swollen, knuckles wrapped. Was he preparing for a return? Was he staying away to heal, or was he simply waiting? watching the chessboard until it was time to make his move. That question, that lingering silence, made every segment on WWE television feel like a countdown. And then, something unexpected happened. Seth Rollins' title defense was scheduled for the following month at Clash at the Castle. His opponent was announced, but it wasn't Roman Reigns. And it wasn't CM Punk. It was Gunther, the ring general, the man who had been silently dominating the Intercontinental Championship scene and now wanted his shot at the world title. And unlike the others, Gunther didn't care about the politics. He didn't care about Punk. He didn't care about Roman. He just wanted to fight. And suddenly, Seth Rollins found himself under siege from all sides. Roman Reigns circling in the shadows. CM Punk haunting the background like a ghost. And now Gunther, a brutal force of nature, coming directly for his crown. It was almost poetic. 3 wolves, one throne, and Seth Rollins, for all his bravado, all his titles, all his scars, knew something deep in his bones. Survival wouldn't be about skill. It wouldn't be about strategy. It would be about endurance. Could he outlast them? Could he endure Roman's wrath, Punk's revenge, Gunther's brutality? Or would he finally, after years of being the guy, collapse under the weight of it all? Because in the end, the gold he carried wasn't just a title. It was a target, and the most dangerous men in wrestling history were now aiming at it, and at him. As the weeks rolled on, the WWE Universe watched with bated breath. The anticipation was thicker than ever. Seth Rollins was being hunted, not by one man, but by the shadows of his past, the consequences of his ambition, and the legends that once stood beside him, or in his way. SummerSlam had ended. The matches were done. But the war that Roman Reigns began in that locker room had only just started to ripple outward. The night of Clash at the Castle loomed large. Seth Rollins versus Gunther was official. But behind the scenes, the real drama wasn't about the belt, it was about the silence. Roman Reigns hadn't been seen publicly since his confrontation with Seth. CM Punk hadn't returned a single call from WWE management. Paul Heyman had gone dark, declining all interview requests and refusing to appear at any additional live events. And yet, something was coming. Everyone could feel it. The locker room had changed. Veterans moved with caution. Rising stars kept their heads down. Seth, once the loudest voice in every hallway, had grown quieter, sharper, more focused. Every time he passed a monitor backstage, he seemed to glance just a little longer, as if waiting for the feed to cut to something or someone unexpected. And then came the night before Clash at the Castle. A leaked image hit Reddit. Grainy, unverified, but unmistakable. It showed Roman Reigns and CM Punk seated in a dimly lit restaurant in downtown Glasgow, just minutes from the arena. At first, most people thought it was fake. A deep fake. Photoshop. A stunt. But by morning, a second photo surfaced, this time from outside the restaurant. The timestamp matched. And that's when chaos broke loose. What were Roman and Punk talking about? Had they formed an alliance? Were they planning to confront Seth live during the title match? Social media exploded with theories. Fans demanded answers. WWE, as usual, said nothing, but the entire roster knew one thing. This wasn't just another rumor. This was something real. Backstage at Clash at the Castle, the tension was suffocating. Gunther, ever stoic, prepared for the biggest match of his career in near silence. Seth Rollins sat in his dressing room, lacing his boots, occasionally glancing at his phone. No calls, no messages. Just waiting. Paul Heyman was nowhere to be found. Triple H was said to be pacing in gorilla position, headset off, arms crossed, refusing to give any green light to camera crews without his say-so. And then it was time. Seth Rollins made his entrance, pyro blasting, the crowd in Scotland going wild. He wore white and gold, a statement, a symbol of legacy, of light amidst the chaos. The world title glinted under the arena lights. But behind his eyes was something else. Doubt? Maybe. Readiness? Absolutely. Gunther entered next. No frills. No distractions. Just violence in motion. And as the match began, something shifted. It wasn't just about technical brilliance or ring psychology, though both men delivered that in abundance. It was about emotion. Every slam, every reversal, every submission told a story. Seth wasn't just trying to beat Gunther. He was trying to prove that this title, meant something more than the ghosts chasing it. But midway through the match, the arena lights flickered, just once, and it was enough. The crowd roared. Not because of what they saw, but because of what it might mean. Backstage, security scrambled. Production crews checked cables. Commentary teams played it off, but then it happened again. The lights flickered, and this time, a shadow passed across the Jumbotron. Just a silhouette. A man. A hoodie, standing at the top of the arena, unmoving. Seth saw it. Gunther saw it. The fans saw it. The match paused, not officially, but emotionally. And in that moment, the tension reached a crescendo, because everyone watching, both in the arena and around the world, believed the same thing. Roman Reigns had arrived, but the man never moved. Never came down the stairs. Never interfered. He just stood there, watching. The match resumed. Seth, now shaken, fought harder. Faster. Gunther, focused as ever, tried to take advantage. But the weight of that figure looming above them shifted everything. Every decision. Every blow. Every breath. In the final moments, Seth dug deep. Hit the pedigree. Hit the stomp. 1, 2, 3. He retained, but he didn't celebrate. He looked up, and the figure was gone. Backstage, the chaos was silent. No one had seen Roman. No camera had caught him entering or exiting. No parking records showed his arrival. And then, just minutes after Seth had walked through the curtain, drenched in sweat, clutching his title like it was all he had left, a delivery arrived. Not a message. A box. Inside? A single item. CM Punk's old ring jacket. No note. No explanation. Just a reminder. Seth stood there, staring at it. Everyone around him backed away slowly. They didn't want to be near him when the next message arrived, because now there were no more mind games. No more ambiguity. This was no longer about tea.